Hello and welcome back to another edition of Tropics Talk. Gulf Coast meteorologist Jim Dickey with you here on this Tuesday, August the 12th, 2025. We are tracking Tropical Storm Erin in the far eastern side of the basin. Formed yesterday, the fifth named storm of 2025, as we'll talk about in a moment here, likely to become the first hurricane of 2025 in the Atlantic. Real quickly, though, two other areas marked for potential development, The first, we have a non-tropical low south of Nova Scotia. This has settled in close to the warm waters of the Gulf Stream. Remember, the Gulf Stream cuts out from Hatteras and then goes out into the central Atlantic. So the waters are warm enough here for this to make a run at some tropical, subtropical development. I think anything that would form be short-lived, because as we jump out here into the Great Lakes, there's a front. That front is going to move offshore and basically gobble up anything that is out there at that point in time, tomorrow into Thursday in the Atlantic. So no threat to land here. Perhaps whatever is left of this drifts northward towards Atlantic Canada. Not a threat to the United States. Certainly not any type of issue for Florida. And then into the Gulf. The area that brought flooding rain to us here going back to the weekend in southwest Florida has meandered its way to the north and west, and now is nosing towards the coast of Louisiana, and you can see what it's doing, sparking some heavy rain, heavy thunderstorm activity. So just like we saw locally on Sunday, there'll be the threat for some flooding from this Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama into the Florida Panhandle as it slowly lifts northward. The Hurricane Center has marked it yesterday, but has maintained zero development chance with this, 0% development chance. So not likely to become a tropical depression prior to moving onshore, but you don't need something to be a tropical depression for it to be a big rainmaker. We found that out in spades over the weekend, and this will continue to produce that heavy rain along the northern Gulf Coast today. All right, on to Erin we go. This is the 5 o'clock update. Remember, you might be watching this now wondering where's the 8 o'clock update. We don't get those intermediary updates until there is watches and warnings in association with the storm. As this is out over the open Atlantic now, there won't be any watches or warnings for some time as that works its way westward here for the next couple of days. So instead we get 5 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., 11 p.m. Take a look at the satellite presentation, and it's looking fairly ragged right now. You can actually see the basically entirety of the surface circulation on the satellite right now. There's not much deep convective activity, not much thunderstorm activity surrounding the center. Like yesterday when this formed, we had that burst of deep convection over the center. Not so right now. This is basically void of that thunderstorm activity at this point in time. Still moving to the west pretty quickly, 22 miles per hour. Sustained winds 45 miles per hour. Still well-defined circulation, even despite the lack of thunderstorm activity. As to why we're not seeing much thunderstorm activity with it right now, we haven't seen any intensification. It's because of this Saharan dust surrounding the storm, stable air basically surrounding the storm right now, leveling off the ability for it to bring that upward motion and produce the heavy thunderstorm activity over the center that it would want if it was going to be strengthening at this point in time. Now, as the storm works westward, you can sort of track the circulation, follow my cursor here, working to the west. Eventually, once we get, in particular, to the weekend, the dust stays off to the east. There's still some drier air around it, but at this point, I think it will sort of have surrounded itself in an envelope of tropical moisture, and that will really allow it to start to take off intensity-wise, particularly as it cuts northward, hopefully paralleling and staying offshore of the East Coast. Each line here on this would be a different model forecast for intensity. Strong agreement that this remains a tropical storm for the next day or so, and then ramping up that intensity, hurricane strength by Friday, up to major hurricane status potentially as we go into Sunday. You see a number of those models now creeping up to Cat 3, one of them all the way up to Cat 4. And certainly once this gets away from that Saharan dust, there won't be much to hold it back. There's the forecast in the Hurricane Center a little earlier on the intensity timing and the intensification than the models I just showed you here. We remain at tropical storm strength today through tomorrow, then up to Category 1 by the time we get to Thursday, which is also when we start to see a turn to the north and west. Category 3 by Sunday. Now, remember, any of you watching from the U.S. Virgin Islands, from Puerto Rico, we have to remember what the cone shows. It is the width of the cone is the same for every storm. This cone is designed to show you the average forecast error from the Hurricane Center over the last 5 years, and that error grows the further out you go in time. So history tells you, yeah, the forecast is for the center line. The forecast calls for the stay north of the Caribbean, but history tells us the center could be anywhere from way out here, further to the north, further away from land, more in the central Atlantic, to a little too close for comfort, which is why especially those, the outer rim of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the Lesser Antilles, need to be keeping a close eye on this storm, as I'm sure you are, as it does approach. Yeah, the most likely scenario is, though, it stays to the north of the islands and then makes that hard turn to the north. Remember, one of the main steering factors for these disturbances that come off the coast of Africa is the Bermuda-Azores High, the area of high pressure that stretches across the Atlantic. Right now, it is stretched across the entirety of the central Atlantic. By the time we get to Sunday, it starts to break down a little bit. In deep blue is the center of that high pressure. I have it marked in the big H. It's going to ride the fringes of that high. Right now, it's steering it west. Once we get to Sunday, the high is breaking down. You see those lighter blue shades. That will allow this, on the western fringes of the high, to turn to the north. Now, certainly, we'll be watching this for Bermuda, and the question is, how far west does this go before it takes the turn to the north? For something this far out, there's fairly strong model agreement right now. You see the models are closely clustered, well east of the Bahamas, and generally splitting the uprights between the U.S. and Bermuda, which would be ideal. Keep it away from a landfall there. But again, that fairly well agreed upon turn to the north for these anywhere close to the U.S. Here's a different way of looking at this, though. This is from the European, what's called the ensemble of the European forecast. I like to look at these to get a better idea of the probability of different outcomes here. In this case, we're looking at the probability of of hurricane strength winds, hurricane force winds. So this kind of gives you an idea of where the different members of the ensemble are showing the storm tracking, some a little further to the west, and with that there are low probabilities here close to the coast of the U.S. If this swings a little further to the west, yeah, perhaps we could get into some direct impacts on the U.S. East Coast. Some go further out to sea, too. You don't want to discount that. This could even stay east of Bermuda, depending on when that turn occurs. But the most likely scenario at this point in time, something turning to the north prior to the Bahamas, and again, splitting the uprights between the U.S. East Coast and Bermuda. Would say east coast of Florida, particularly the Carolinas, definitely Bermuda. You need to be sure you're keeping close tabs on the forecast track, that you're checking in with the Hurricane Center for the latest with each update. You keep with us here at Gulf Coast Weather, as well as we'll continue to track Aaron closely in the coming days as it does gain strength approaching the Caribbean. I'll be back with the latest, with another edition of Tropics Talk for you tomorrow morning, so be sure you stay tuned for that. Otherwise, have a great day.